Hi everybody, today it is raining, so excuse the background noise if you hear any of that, but basically today we are speaking about mythology. I've already filmed mythology books I recommend before, but I got some more, so let's just get into it. Troy. This book is about the Odyssey and the Iliad. It's a pretty good book. It's actually probably a lot easier to read than I'd say most books about Troy. But because we're on this topic, I also got the Illustrated Odyssey. It is the Odyssey, but just illustrated. So if you like pictures, then this is a great option. It's a beautiful book. And if you would like to read the full Iliad and Odyssey, I recommend getting the Barnes & Noble edition. This version of the Iliad and Odyssey is a big book. It's so many words, and it's translated very, very well. I love it. It's pretty. It's amazing. However, in case you didn't know, this is kind of like a book series because the Iliad came first, then the Odyssey, then the Aeneid. The third book, the last book pretty much in this little series. Reading it in order just makes sense, so read the Iliad, the Odyssey, then the Aeneid. Fall of Troy may have seemed like a win for Greece, but it actually was a loss because although Greece won, they still fell and then Rome pretty much took over later. So yeah, it's an iconic but sad but very entertaining story. The Trojan War is such a long story, spreading out over these 3 books. They're so ancient, but they've been translated, and I really hope that you guys want to deep dive into them. Obviously, if you want to read summaries, that's okay, but if you would love to read the full stories, then go for it. But next up is Atlantis. It's a book dedicated to the theories and lore behind Atlantis. Is Atlantis a hidden place? Is it made up? We don't know. Personally, I feel like Atlantis was already found, and maybe we know where it is, but that's a theory for another day. Personally, I feel like Atlantis has been found. But if you like Atlantis, this might be a really great book to read to help you come to your own conclusions. But next up, I recommend these pocket guides. These are my favorite history books because they are so easy to read and also don't over-explain anything, so you are constantly learning new info without staying on one topic for too long. They are filled with illustrations to help you get a better picture of what ancient life was like. So if you want to learn the religion, the politics, laws, the mythology, the music, the food they had, get these pocket guides, honestly. The Unicorn Tapestries. I love this book because I had it as a kid, but I lost it and since then never found it, so I had to buy it back recently. And I love it even more than I did as a kid because the book explains the meaning behind the unicorn art in the story and the symbolism of these art pieces. I feel like the unicorn hunts kind of explained why unicorns could have hypothetically went extinct. I mean, I've read a lot about how unicorns were most likely hunted, so I think it's so interesting how this book tries to interpret unicorn art and discuss the story of the unicorn through the ancient artwork. We could gather so much from artwork, we honestly can, if we just look closer. But on accident, I purchased the Unicorn Tapestries Part B. Part B is like a study guide on the book, kind of. Like, it's just like if someone wrote an essay about the unicorn tapestries and put it in a book. So this unicorn book is like 50 pages long. And there's a lot of info missing from it, so obviously get the original unicorn tapestry book. If you want to get part 2, part B, whatever it's called, you can. But I'll just keep both. But anyway, paganism. I really do love this book. It's very much a history of being pagan and how Christianity oppressed people who believe in multiple gods. It's a really sad book. Christianity did not take over the world for being loving. It took over the world by forcing people to join them. People who believed in Greek gods and Roman gods were not allowed to work because they weren't Christian. And Christians would break into temples that Greek and Roman people had and would destroy statues, burn down sacred trees, and Christians were a big reason why women ended up being destroyed for being witches or for not being Christian enough. I mean, women were even destroyed for just being accused of being a witch or whatever. So this book is so, so sad. But because of how bad it was back then, people would try to worship their Greek or Roman gods in secret. And if anybody found out who was secretly worshiping, then the Christians would immediately find a way to ruin it on them. And it was very, very sad. There was so much, like, hate going on towards pagan people, towards polytheistic people, pretty much. Yes, there are some people who willingly left their religion to join Christianity, but polytheistic people were very much forced to switch over, and polytheism got demonized for a very long time. For example, gods of lust like Pan, who is a goat person, as well as other horned gods, they ended up being labeled as evil. So now demons may have devil horns or are portrayed as evil creatures if they have horns. But in reality, horned god just means fertility and sexual health or lust. Many people prayed to fertility gods for a baby. But then Christians decided to just slander polytheistic religions and force people out of them. I love this book because it is an easy read and teaches the history of how paganism was demonized and how Christianity did it. Knowing this information just explains so much about why today's people may be derogatory to people who identify as polytheistic, such as me. Many people who are Christian literally tell me I am satanic for being pagan. I have been told before how pagan is also an insult, and I know that, but I feel like me speaking about the topic takes the power back. Hiding the history of what bad people do just makes them stronger and is exactly why witches and polytheistic people may still be harmed today. If not destroyed, they are at least kicked out of their family's house or even are assaulted. By the way, I got this as a gift from a subscriber, so thank you for using my Amazon wishlist. The Darkening Age is a really great book on the topic, so if you want to learn more history on how the classical world was destroyed, then read this book too. Which, by the way, when I say these things, I'm not trying to make Christians look bad. I'm just saying the past was bad, and hiding it makes the pain worse. Although you could be a good Christian, that does not mean that all Christians are. A lot of Christians that I've spoken to love to hide the oppression that polytheistic people dealt with, because I guess they find it embarrassing that people from their own religion did such horrible things. But if you hide the fact that this stuff happened, it's exactly why it may continue to happen. I got this as a gift from a subscriber, so thank you for using my Amazon wishlist. Moving on, Angels. This is probably the best angel book I have at the moment. I didn't think I would like it as much as I do, but it's a very in-depth book, and of course, it's an Oxford book, so it's very scholarly, but although that may make angels feel like it's just a myth, the book actually made me believe more in angels and understand way more about them. It's very in-depth of a book, and the deep thinking within the writing is a great way to understand more about angels and wonder what they may be capable of and how we could possibly use them in our belief system. But anyway, the Library of Greek Mythology. This book is so ancient and had to be translated, of course, but reading the original source material that was written thousands of years ago may be very useful if you want more insight on the topic of mythology, since some new books leave out a lot of details. By the way, I got this as a gift from a subscriber, so thank you for using my Amazon wishlist. Next up is the Book of Hell. I read the Book of Hell and I thought it was one of the most creepy books I ever read. It's sinister and gave me chills. This book discusses the several versions of hell and how strange they are. It's very odd and very disturbing in the best way. I think the author did an amazing job at really being able to get readers to feel the insidious energy through the pages. At some points I felt like I was holding that creepy book from The Evil Dead. So good job to the makers of this book. The Complete Odes. It's a really good book if you love learning about the Olympics. This book is the celebration of victories from the Olympic Games that took place thousands of years ago. Whether it be horse races, foot races, boxing, wrestling, disc throwing, the games were remembered, and reading about them is a great way to appreciate our ancient athletes. Stories regarding mythology are also included. By the way, I got this as a gift from a subscriber, so thank you for using my Amazon wishlist. The Golden Donkey. I got this book because it is a very important novel, which it's actually one of the only ancient Roman novels to survive being fully finished. A lot of ancient stories are found destroyed or missing parts, but this one is all here, and without spoiling it, it's basically about a guy who can't stop himself from practicing magic and gets turned into a donkey on accident, which leads into this journey of trying to be saved from his predicament. Fairies. I think this book is a great book, of course. I've said before how Myths and Legends and Lore is an amazing series, but I just had to get this book because it's such an interesting topic. I never really knew much about fairies, so when I got this book I was very excited to learn more, and I'm really glad I did get the book because it has taught me more about fairies than any other book ever has. When God Was a Woman. This is probably one of the most important books I've ever read. It not only deep dives into several religions and mythologies, but connects it to ancient and modern day sexism towards women. This book explains how religion was crafted to control women, and was very much made by men to get women to do as they say. Originally, gods were women, but taking female gods away means all women have to look up to is men, and when only men are in power, things could go bad really quick. This is why we need diversity and more women in power, rather than just having men in power. This can also relate to today's world. Religion and politics get mixed up a lot, and if religion says women are lesser than men, then people will vote for things that take away women's equal rights. I mean, just think about what happened to Lilith or Medusa, maybe even Eve. I've thought for a while now that it's pretty obvious that religion could be extremely damaging, especially towards gay people, trans people, and women, as well as animals. But this book did such a great job at explaining everything and deep diving into the topic that I was so shocked, and the book is just so eye-opening. By the way, I got this as a gift from a subscriber, so thank you for using my Amazon wishlist. Metamorphosis! I have 2 copies of this book. Both are translated by 2 different people, but either way are both amazing and really do explain the start and growth of mythology in classical times. Mythology can really be tricky to get into if you are new to the topic. I was raised Christian and was taught very summarized stories out of Roman and Greek mythology. Most of the stories I wasn't even aware of until I started to switch religions. But since it is a very complex topic to get into, the best I could say is just, if you want to learn about mythology, treat it like a huge complex book series that has many different characters and storylines. If you want, you can also try to learn a little bit about the history of the ancient worlds, but reading books about ancient religion may help too. I always was so confused on the topic growing up because I just didn't understand it, but basically, mythology is the stories from the religion, but religion is how the beliefs are practiced. Once I realized that, I had a way better time understanding all of this. Learning the history too can also help explain why things were done how they were in the past. Also, don't forget how different stories have different versions, so I keep that in mind. And that is why I have so many mythology books, because there's different versions of the same stories. But I've been on fire lately. I mentioned earlier this year in a video that it may take me days or even weeks or sometimes months to finish a book because I have a very hard time focusing, but thankfully I found some ways to fix that. And because of my new motivation and focus, I've literally been able to finish reading several books in just 1 week, sometimes even a book a day. So I pretty much spent my entire summer reading. That sounds like an awful summer break to a lot of people, but I had a fun time. Now I know more than I ever have, and understand so much more too. Metamorphosis is a book I highly suggest because it, to me, is like the Bible of Greek mythology. Plus, it's written in a very beautiful way. But lastly, we got Women and Other Monsters. This book is also extremely eye-opening for learning about how mythology and hatred towards women evolved. Women in a lot of stories were painted out to be monsters. Mermaids are eating men, harpies are destroying men's food, there are female horses that eat men, and some more monsters that really are just women that people love to hide the backstories of. For example, Medusa's not bad, and neither are a lot of other female monsters. Medusa may look very evil, but the reality, though, is that she isn't the monster. The monster in the story truly would be the men who harmed her. You may be a really great man who is watching this video and wants to learn more about these topics, so you may be offended. It can be embarrassing to know that somebody of your kind did something so awful to women. However, getting more men to speak up on how men harm women is, I believe, a great step in teaching men to become kinder. Men tend to listen to other men, and if even just one man speaks up and says that women deserve rights, then more women can be taken seriously because they have an ally. By the way, I got this as a gift from a subscriber, so thank you for using my Amazon wishlist. But yeah, that is finally the end of the video. I have been talking for 30 minutes. So yeah, tell me which books you would purchase off this list down below. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!